Hi, Natalie and Sun. This is going to be your critique for your first project. We'll start here with Natalie. We have our basic head and shoulders portrait, what I'm sort of referring to as a profile shot. And you do have more environmental information than the typical profile shot, at least, or a typical formal portrait would have. I mean, you get a sense here. The other thing that also I entertain as I look at this image is I get the sense that you are in this, the Walmart Vision Center, and then you have these glasses on. It feels more like you're trying on these glasses, and glasses like affect identity. Like they say, the visually people read you as 10 points smarter looking if you're wearing glasses. I think that's a real stat. So I find that interesting that I see this, and then right away I start questioning, like, oh, we're trying on glasses, kind of putting on different identities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, that becomes interesting in that realm. And then here we get a little bit more drama in the light, and also in the pose and the expression. And I kind of want to. Looks like you probably have some filtering on here too, but I want to play like, I don't know why I want, but like black and white filter, and even push the contrast a little bit further, amp it up a little bit. But I think there's the look and expression on your face, and this closer in, tighter cropping, and the little higher contrast in it. There's kind of a sense of personality that gets across in this image, whether or not that personality is real or not. There is this sense in there. So I think that is successful. And then this last one, more environment, also becomes sort of interesting because, we get this sense of a grouping of people, a beach, an environment, feels like a little vacation or day at the beach, family, friends, sort of thing. So we get that sense of importance. Also feels kind of snapshotish, the horizon's not level, and, it's just like, hey, quick, capture this, remember this moment, and so that's good. Looking at your research here, I was thinking you pulled out the fact that photographs showing African Americans taking the same protest to the United Nations were described as showing U.S. Negro extremists on the rampage who intended to foment black anger against the white race. And I like how you found that, from Life in 1961. And I also thought it was important how you equated that today, how news talks about things, contextualizes our understanding of that thing. And you went on to say that this is a type of propaganda that seems to be repeating itself in today's era. Media manipulation and fake news. I thought that was a good insight. It doesn't necessarily relate to the photographs that we're looking at here, but I thought it was a good insight. Because the idea of learning from history, we have to be able to recognize what happened in the past and how that could be happening again, and whether it's positive or negative. And critique and analyze our culture as much as we critique and analyze our images as art teachers. All right, so this is, I believe, your Who You Are Not sort of photograph, and it feels kind of snapshot-ish. It feels kind of, it looks like something that might happen in your art classroom. So I'm not quite sure who the subculture is that's looking at you. But, so I was a little confused on this image. All right, let's see. Now, of how other people see you, you posted a number of images. But this one is the one that I thought was the most effective, because I liked how you took on the persona of who your friends think you are. And this or lady character, and and I think it's effective in a number of different ways. The wig seems kind of fakeish, and glasses seem over the top. But all that stuff I think sort of works, especially when you kind of look at it in the context of friends, because now you're playing on that role and feeling, little, friends we have more fun with and comfortable and be goofy with and say things we might not say in other environments. And, so you seem to like let some of that through. And it also feels sort of like this selfie and this identity that you've created. But so I think this image was interesting. The other thing I thought was really interesting that you brought up in your research paper, when you're talking about social media and its effects on our lives and our identity, you brought up that instance of a young lady posting online who was part of a gang, and then she posted a photograph of her with two girls who were members of a rival gang, and then she got beat up for this because they felt like she was, part of that rival gang, or somehow cheating on them or something with this sort of rival gang, and it fomented into, vicious violence. What a horrible experience for everyone involved with that. But just showing that power of the image and social media in a very negative context. And in my world, that just blows my mind. I try to be able to listen to other people, and she may not have been doing, she was interacting with those people in a positive, I don't know if it's a positive way, but she wasn't pushing her gang affiliation onto those other people, it seems like. And that becomes the problem, because that creates the issue that she's friendly with them, and that's bad. And that's cool. It's such a extreme worldview, and that's what happens in those gangs, is this extreme worldview. Um, there's a lot of use of symbols and colors and signs within that gang culture to show your affiliation and your allegiance. And then that really seems to get exaggerated in this case on social media. It's just not something you don't see too much of in central Nebraska, though we do have gang activity here, but not quite to that extent. But I thought that was a really interesting thing that you shared with us. So. All right, I think we'll leave it at that, and then we're going to move on. I want to critique Sun's project here. And there are a lot of explorations here. I appreciate how in-depth you went with it. And I haven't been able to connect it together into on Instagram yet, but I just wanted to get this out here. So I figured we'd talk about some of the more effective ones. This is obviously, I would say, your typical head and shoulders portrait, profile picture, your average profile picture, and communicates that. Looks like, I don't know if you have a backpack on there or whatever, but so that works for what it is to be doing. And then I'm not sure the exact order of these, or maybe you tell me here. Okay, this is who you are not. So it looks like you're taking on that sort of housewife role, cooking this healthy supper, and it feels like just an image that might get posted on social media. Hey, I'm cooking to my family healthy supper, and so I think that's an effective image. It has much more of this. It's not a refined look, but that's what we see a lot in social media. It's not the super refined image, so. I don't know if you play with any filters or if it's just light coming in here. There's a softness up here, a little bit of softness coming around here, and I'm not sure how that is, but I don't know if we need to play with more filters, but it might be interesting to see what different filters were. Well, this one is you're not, because I remember you talking about that, I think also in your paper, as well as in creating it. And then you had another variation here, which we'll find it eventually. Yeah, this one where you blur out the background and put the emphasis on the ball. You look like a sporty person here, and that's who you are not. So maybe that other image wasn't who you are not, but whatever. So I kind of like the playing with the focus, the in and out of focus, and putting the emphasis on here. And this simultaneously, the action says who you're not, but in some ways, like the blurring out of your face, kind of reduces your identity a little bit and kind of separates you that, and kind of it says who you're not to some degree within this image. So I like how you're thinking about that. Yeah. All right. Let's keep moving along here. Though I did like reference in your research paper. I like how you kind of expressed where you said you're talking about sharing these images with your sister because she knows you best. And you then went on to say, it reminds you of how Penelope Umbrico's portfolio took various sunsets with silhouettes. It states that the sunsets remove all subjectivity or objectivity of the people and create a focus on the sunsets and remove identity of people. And I think this project took all the subjectivity off of the real me and put a focus on the persona of who people see you as. So I know that's one thing I came up with when I teaching. We often do all these self-portraits, and I do a lot of them in classes. We start with ourselves. Well, that's why I took that when I first started teaching my artificial lighting class. I decided to do this anti-self-portrait. And I think it's a really interesting way to approach ourselves is looking not who we are, but who we aren't, because that can inform us who we are and vice versa. But it's such a different way of us thinking, and we have to think, different and then act different. And, I think it gets us into, in some ways, a deeper analysis of who we are and who we are not. Okay, anyways, so moving on, I want to get back to your photo stream. There are a lot of photographs here. And looking at all the variations, who we are not, and who culture sees us as. Okay, that's who we're not, and then who culture sees us as. And you talked about, the housewife, superwoman, and we talked about blurring out the background. When I look at this image, the blurring out becomes fairly extreme, and it almost starts to feel a little collagey. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But it does almost start to divorce itself a little bit from, quote unquote, the photographic. And, that's one thing I think about. I'm not sure how real important it is. Art is art. But the photograph has, a different connotation than collage or painting or drawing. And I think each of those mediums comes built in with a certain set of different ideas associated with it. So there's this point where we start to detach it from photography, where we kind of lose those identifiers and concepts that we relate to photographs. So this starts to push the abstraction a little bit. Like if we would have backed off on that softness of the background a little bit, it might still feel sort of photographic. But now it's starting to push into that realm where it feels more abstract and more constructed and created, so it starts to feel more fake. And that becomes an interesting point, especially when we're thinking about in terms of identity. If our identity is fake, that becomes interesting. But I like the composition, and I like all the symbols and things that there's like a lot of richness. And I feel like I could look at this image a lot and keep pulling out things and thinking about how they relate to identity as to who you are. I can segue a little bit into some of your research here. I like where you brought up Snopes. That is why sites like Snopes exist, to give us a quick reality check of whether we should believe everything or see, or Snopes can help us fact check a certain thing. And that can be important for us and a good critical thinking tool. then also we can also have to challenge Snopes, just like I challenge my thought process when I search something on Google. Google, is out to make money, and therefore some of the top hits are, that are featured sites. That means people are paying money to put them there. So that in some ways corrupts that search a little bit. But I thought that was interesting to bring up that other media site of Snopes. And then I had one other thing highlighted in your research, and this went back to the Congo. There are a lot of comments about the Congo, and it is so interesting, that construct of Africa as this dark continent, this uncivilized continent, this unchristian continent, these people that need our help to become, more contemporary and civilized people. And it's such an arrogant construct. I think many people reacted to it, and it's so funny because I think that construct is so ingrained. It is still with us today in so many ways. And if you talk to your students and you get into Africa and ask them, what they think that place is like, you'll hear these constructs, negative constructs. But you went on to say it seems that they wanted people to believe that they were heroes coming in to create a more civilized life for these people, when in fact they were already civilized. And you hit that. That's a good summation of what happened with that colonialization and what we use to justify our actions. And I related to this. I don't think culture has changed. Like there's always this people wanting to control other people, colonize, power structures. Power structures, power likes power, but the social media has this opportunity to disrupt that power structure, but also this way to be abused by the power structure. And it just seems like, and it can happen so quick. That's the thing, is watching these things in real time, our understanding of them is, minimal. And we have to be careful with what we believe and how, quickly we buy into things. But yeah, it's, such a double-edged sword. So, all right. Anyways, those are some of my thoughts, Sunshine. So, we'll leave it at that.